that point. One of the early things that I did with this in the last few weeks was to try to get some organization to this group, and we have some positions and some ideas that we need to establish. And I'd like to suggest the following. Ellen, who had to pick up some a guest at the airport, will be here shortly. But I would like to put Ellen in charge of communications. She's excellent. She knows what to do. She woke me up at, 7 o'clock in the morning telling me that I wasn't at my computer yet. And that was the second thing I did when I got up out of bed, was to put my pants on and get to the computer. So she follows up very nicely. She works well with many of us. Annette has been very helpful, and if she wants to help continuing, we'd be more than happy to ask you to come on.
Ellen's assistant.
You got it. The one thing that we need to make sure of is that in any of the agenda items that come about, that we make sure that we identify that a particular meeting on the subject that we're dealing with is coming up, so we can notify the group. That would be an important key to it. The legal team is up here. You all know Randy and Richard Koo are up here along with the attorney, and they'll introduce themselves again, and I want to get the preliminaries out of the way, and then we'll turn it over to the people from the concerned citizens, and then we'll go with this group here. Tony is also stuck in New York City. He's going to work as the treasurer. So any funds that are being collected or will need to be collected, if we vote to have legal representation, Tony would be the one to keep accounting of it. From that account, only, in my opinion, only funds elected to go to a hired attorney or whomever would be authorized, except if someone comes up with an out-of-pocket expense in order to go mailing or whatever. I think those items should be covered. That would be my request. John, I've talked to John, and he's willing to handle the concept of safety. So anytime we have a problem dealing with safety, whether it's fire, traffic, public events, kids on the road running, that we know that that's the case as well, John will handle that. Art, you see down there on the end, Art is going to be dealing with the unintended consequences. The other day, if you had the chance to listen to him on the planning board, he found an article in the paper for a city car club in New York where you can rent a car for a day and drive it around. And if they can do that kind of thing, there's no reason why you can't have some of that spilling over. I don't know how they work car clubs because I'm not a member of one of those. The environmental issues, I can use some help here. I've been doing some of it with regard to water and water flow. I'm concerned about the water that's in that area and the direction in which it flows, both on the surface as well as in the aquifer. And I have some of that information down here. You may recall at the last meeting, I was asked if an opportunity arose, would I talk with the applicant? Well, at the planning board the other day, the chairman of the planning board, Mr. Green, had indicated that maybe you guys ought to get together and identify issues so that we can move along at a more rapid pace. I took that opportunity to meet with the applicant on a one-on-one basis to go over the issues, and as he walked out of that room, I introduced myself, gave him my card. The next morning he called me. I told him that who I represented and that we were looking to go over the details of the issues. I told him that when you tell me you're having a car wash, I can accept that phrase, but I want to know where's the water going, how much water will be used, what kind of detergent are you using, where is the flow, and so on. It's not just a general statement. I want the details. His comment back to me was, we will give you as much information as the planning board asks us. Next point he brought up was distribution of information. And I asked him to remove the phrase he was using from his vocabulary because I felt it was disingenuous. His phrase was, I don't just want one person, meaning me, complaining, or 30 people, or 60 people. I want all 13,000 people to know what's going on in this community. I advised him that I would be more than happy to distribute mail. That's one of our thoughts. But I cannot guarantee that the people are going to read it, and those who read it will understand it. We'll do our best to do that. He was not available because of his travels. I will not be available next week, and the following week he will not, so he's going to call me back on the 16th of April to see if we can work on a one-on-one time schedule. All right? I'm going to ask you all, and on the back of a pile of papers which I'll put out here that you can pick up, Arthur has prepared an open letter on the back of which is a listing of the emails for the administration. So you've got all of that information, you can send it. The more information we deliver to them, the better it's going to be, the more effective. Our indication is that we do not feel granting this applicant, Tony, granting this applicant a special use permit for this location is an appropriate use for our environment. People have been carrying petitions around. I've just got one back here. If you've got some that you'd like to give us, please do. I have another supply of it because you can't get away with it. I would suggest you carry it around with you. I will tell you that I was at a church service the other day, and between services, we asked for signatures. People were very interested. We made sure that we didn't push the issue too far, but we did get a bunch of signatures, and Marianne McCrae was also there with her petition, and she outbeat me considerably. I think she had in excess of 30 signatures on that one. I mentioned to you that I am concerned about the aquifer, right, and how that water is going to be moving around, and I will proceed further. I have contacted the Audubon Society to see if we can get some help in understanding how that works. We believe it's only a challenge. It's not an issue of permanency. But I'm concerned that the water that's going into the aquifer could be contaminated. There is some explanation that the water from those ponds, if it's contaminated, will flow into Byram Lake and then in through Connecticut and down into the Long Island Sound. That would be the surface water. What about the subsurface water? And I've done some work on aquifers. If you wish, I will share that information with you. Does anyone have any questions of me? Okay, we need to go with, we've got most of the team done. We need to pick someone who's going to lead this group, right? And I am not committed to be the only one. If anyone else wishes to volunteer, and I will be their assistant, that's all fine with me. What's your pleasure?
Go.
Go ahead. Go. Okay, to that, thank you very much. To that extent, since I do a lot of traveling, I'm away a major portion of the summer. Bob has been kind enough to accept that he will be second in line for any problems that you may have, so that we've got this thing pretty well closed up. Right? Any other questions? Any ideas? One of the things that I wanted to do with this meeting was to demonstrate that although we're not all marching to the same drummer, we have the same point in mind. And that is, we are the people. And we have a concern. And we have petitioned our administrators to resolve those concerns. To that end, Charlotte has come along from a group. And again, if you wish to put your email address in their group, please feel free to do it. I've got some cards. If there are members of her group here who wish to be on our mailing list, then we have cards to do that as well, and we can pick those up. So,
First, thank you for inviting me here to speak tonight about what we're doing. My name is Charlene Jacoby. I am a longtime resident of Banksville, a proud mother of 2 boys who graduated from Byram Hills High School. and the owner of Town Center Pharmacy. I am here tonight to talk to you about our shared concern of development in our community. Our Main Street, Not Chain Street campaign is dedicated to protecting and enhancing our downtown. It was formed last summer in response to new development proposals to build more than 100,000 square feet of retail. Our goal is to ensure Armonk's Main Street success through the adoption of a sound downtown master plan, updated planning and zoning ordinances, and opposition to inappropriate commercial development. Our hamlet is unique, with its architectural mix of small shops, quiet neighborhoods, and Wampus Park. Few places in the United States are as charming, historically significant, environmentally sensitive, and sophisticated. Our Main Street is at risk from a proliferation of big box development. Even though we think we have a small town, we have yet to feel the effects of 50,000 square feet of development in Armonk Square, plus the potential of additional development at Business Park, Mariani Gardens, and the old A&P Shopping Center. There are rumors that developers want to build along Bedford Road from Maple to Maine also. A downtown master plan and updated planning and zoning ordinances are important to sustain the vitality of our small-scale, pedestrian-oriented business district, which in turn nurtures local business development. These sound planning policies will prevent the many negative impacts of overdevelopment, such as increased traffic congestion on Maple and Bedford roads, overburdened water infrastructure, and they protect the character of the community by ensuring that new development is at a scale in keeping with downtown and surrounding landscape. The master plan process will also give the community an opportunity to express its vision. Why should developers Mark Mariani, Martin Werber, owner of the A&P Shopping Center, and Mike Ferrari, who wants to develop his property in Business Park, each do environmental impact studies that just look at their own sites? Wouldn't it make more sense for the town to take this opportunity to do a master study of the entire downtown? Did you know that our town's comprehensive plan is pushing 20 years old? To put the size of current development proposals in perspective, 100,000 square feet of retail is the equivalent of half a dozen professional football fields. Do we want Armonk to be a small hamlet like Pound Ridge or a regional retail hub like Mount Kisco? While our campaign is entitled Main Street, Not Chain Street, we are not against chain stores. The town recently received the Hamlet Design Guidelines and the Formula Business Planning and Zoning Studies. Both studies concluded that our town needs to update its planning policies to protect our community from the danger that will pass a point of no return and lose that part of the fabric of Armonk life. In particular, the Formula Business Study identified inconsistent and vague zoning laws that led to the CVS proposal. Mr. Werber tried to sneak CVS in the A&P property without going through proper process that we all have to go through. Mariani Gardens proposed to add commercial retail uses to their nursery district, but would not be subjected to commercial zoning laws. The town's planning consultant identified one of the weaknesses of our existing fast food laws, which have allowed Dunkin' Donuts to come in as a bakery and Subway as a deli. A downtown master plan might only take 90 to 180 days because much of the work has been done in the previous studies. The campaign stakeholders believe that Armonk's Main Street is the economic engine and core of the community and support policies that develop it into a vibrant, relevant, thriving center that is sustainable, attractive, meaningful place to live, work, and do business. This group consists of more than 50% of the downtown property owners, local merchants, and residents from throughout the community. The Main Street, Not Chain Street campaign is transparent. We have always been forthcoming about our mission, our leaders' business interests, and factual. We have a track record of success. With the support of the community, we forced the A&P developer to adhere to the same zoning rules that every business and resident follows. We are now tackling a much bigger challenge, which take on the master plan and zoning updates. But we know that with your support, we can win again. Please support our cause because everyone has a stake in Armonk's business district. We have petitions that are at the store. We want you to go to the board meetings, the planning board meetings, the ARB meetings, write letters to your elected officials in support of the downtown master plan and zoning updates. You can stay in touch with us by signing up for our mailing list or by joining our Facebook page. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes?
How many members are in your organization?
Well, we had almost 2,000 people signing our original petitions, and people are signing up now on our Facebook page, and it continues to grow.
All of these North Castle residents?
Yes.
Any other questions?
Have you hired attorneys?
Yes, we hired Jeff Baker, who's a land use attorney from Albany.
And how does this relate to the development of the center of the town that's going on right now?
I'm going to introduce you to Greg Lane, who's our spokesman. He can give you that kind of information.
Well, I think as far as it relates to, you're talking about Armonk Square?
Yes.
Well, Armonk Square is a commercially zoned area that went through the approval process. All the environmental studies were done and is not being built. But we actually haven't seen what the effects of that are going to be. So I think as it relates to the rest of the community, we're requesting that the town actually take into account that new development and then the development impacts in the surrounding area that would have as they relate to all these other commercial developments at Mariani's. We took it at the bookends of the town. You have Mariani's Gardens. I'm not sure, is everyone here familiar with what Mariani Gardens had proposed back last summer and then re-proposed back in January?
No.
Okay. That zone is called nursery business.
Excuse me, just one minute, with all due respect, I'd hate for all of these people to be sitting here and not focusing on.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, might I just ask at the end, after we've discussed our business, we can discuss with you all of those issues? Would that, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn.
No,
but-
that's completely, that's perfect. And we have a Facebook site and we have a website which will be able to answer a lot of those questions.
Good, yeah. Would you get together and make sure that the two of you coordinate? In accepting your thoughtfulness and asking me to work with you in doing all this, I would just ask that you understand, A, I disappear for a considerable amount of time during the summer. B, this time of the year, until early June, I'm busy at least 2 evenings a week. When we do have public meetings, and that will inform us of these meetings, when we do have these kinds of meetings, we'd like to have lots of people there. The more that we can have there, the more that can indicate that we are in support of the material being presented, and we rely on responsible information. We would greatly appreciate that. Okay, so I accept it. I will look for your help in working out details. I'll ask for that. But as always, it is necessary that one person make the final decision. I will gather your input, but I will be responsible for making that. I thank you for that. I'm now going to turn this over to Richard and Randy, who have worked with the attorney, and they'll take it from that point on. Richard?
I'm Richard Koo. My family and I have lived on Oregon Road for over 20 years. And a few weeks ago, at the suggestion of Randy Kaplan, who's lived on Oregon Road equally long, if not longer, reached out to Frederick Turner of Turner & Turner for assistance to see whether or not he can give us some guidance as we navigate our way through these legal issues. I've come to understand that there are very few land use attorneys, knowledgeable land use attorneys who are willing to represent opposition groups, neighborhood opposition groups, for obvious reasons. I'm sure you can figure it out. But Rick Turner is one of those, and I think we're fortunate that he's here tonight, and we're looking to him to get us organized and hopefully represent us if that's the will of the people. And without further ado, this is Rick. By the way, Rick has also, in addition to his land use expertise, has served as Greenberg's town attorney for 10 years in the past. So he's also quite familiar with town politics and processes that go into. Rick?
Thank you. My name is Rick Turner. I'm an attorney, as Richard said, in Tarrytown, New York. And I welcome this opportunity to talk to you. I don't know, quite honestly, all the details of this proposal, and I'm certainly not here to tell you that it can be stopped, because the honest answer is I don't know. And you don't know until you really look into the facts. And I didn't really know what I was walking into until I came in the room. But I'm very heartened to hear that there's certainly the broad brushstrokes here of a viable organization. You have somebody organizing you politically, and you're very aware of the legal implications of this application. And we also have a discussion about the comprehensive plan and the definition, or the problem with definitions in your code, deli and bakery, and you're dealing with a very similar situation here of a sports recreation club, recreation facility. And those things don't exist in a vacuum. They're part of a fabric. And this could be a very propitious meeting for your concerns to come together, really, on a couple of different strategies. I've done these battles before, I've been successful, and if you want to follow that question up with really, what do you mean? How do you define success? Sometimes the projects are stopped and never get built. Sometimes, more often, to be honest with you, they're changed and tweaked, and adjustments are made in them that are more accommodating. Size and scale is reduced, access is changed, and things like that. Just by way of background, so you know what my history is. I'm an attorney, as Richard said. I've worked in the city. I was with the New York State Attorney General's office for 10 years under Robert Abrams in the Environmental Protection Bureau. DEC was my client agency, and I have a very good relationship with this region's office, New York State DEC Region 3. I then went to the town of Greenburgh, where I was town attorney for 10 years. Richard said I'm familiar with town politics. Indeed I am. I refer to it as town policy. But politics is certainly a part of it, because as I said, these issues don't occur in a vacuum, as you're well aware with your petition drive already. And you want to, if possible, of course, work with the municipality to the extent possible. After I was town attorney, I joined a law firm in private practice, and I've just recently started my own firm in Tarrytown. As I say, I don't know the details of the application. I don't know the specifics. I'm not about to stand up here and tell you that this can be stopped by any means. But I'm certainly want to tell you that it's big enough, the can of worms in the review process that has to be opened up to do this, of this scale, certainly opens up a lot of opportunities to ask a lot of hard questions and demand some answers. You demand answers to legitimate questions, and you're entitled to those. Let's see. As I said, there's a couple different strategies that I think could be done here.
Perhaps we can talk about the particulars after.
Well, yeah, Gwen will
after
go
our-
into specifics perhaps later this evening. I know that the press is here, so I'm really hesitant to telegraph all my punches in advance. But you have to stay involved in something like this. You'll be offered many opportunities, and I know Nick was just telling you he wants you to turn out at these meetings. That's good. Ask questions. That's good. And that's part of the review process, and there'll be a lot of review in a project this big. And one thing I want you to understand is that just watching the project is, one strategy. An object observed behaves differently than an object unobserved. That was proven back in the Industrial Revolution. But in this case, the courts, if it goes that way, at some point with me or another attorney, will look to the decision, and will look to the record that is established at these boards. And the applicant will be spending a lot of money building his record. And if you're really serious about having your voice heard, I want to choose my words carefully, in a situation like this, it is incumbent on you to establish your own record and make your own facts and put those facts before the decision makers in a timely way. And then you will say that either they ignored them or they were wrong, and you'll have a viable claim if it comes to that. And that's a baseline for one of these controversies, is you've got to be in it to win it. You've got to be building your own record. And we can talk about how that's done and the mechanics of that. And that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Is, your question, is it
I'm-
advisable at this time that the camera be turned off to discuss strategy legally?
I think it's premature,
Okay.
really to discuss, legal strategy. I think this, as I understand it, the application's in the very initial, early stages.
Fine, thank you.
Perhaps we should bring people up to speed as to where the application is, as far as we know.
Go ahead. Go for
Okay.
it.
What's happened so far is the applicants appeared before the town board with preliminary plans and has received comments from Adam Kaufman. And then they presented, I guess it was some sort of preliminary presentation to the planning board. I think it was last week or perhaps the week before. In between the time that they met with the town board and the planning board, they changed the scope of what they said. What they said originally to the town board and what's in their application is for a car club, a membership-only car club for, I think they call them special interest cars, which they described as cars similar to Ferraris and Lamborghinis, et cetera. Several of us, through several letters to the town board, the town attorney, and the town planner, pointed out that under the town code, not only does a membership club have to satisfy the definition of a membership club, but we believed it had to satisfy the purpose section of the code, which requires that a club also, I don't have the language in front of me, perhaps one of you do, but the club has to meet the purpose standards, which I can
What
just
you have
go
reference
through.
to?
Yeah, thank you. You have, okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, okay, so let me just go through that. It's the purpose and intent of this section to encourage the use of land in residence districts for recreational facilities, such as golf courses, tennis and swimming clubs, and similar facilities, to provide for the recreational needs of the town. It's the further purpose and intent of permitting such uses to encourage the maintenance of significant tracts of land as open space, to protect and enhance the environmental and visual quality of the town. Finally, it's the purpose and intent of this section to ensure that such diverse types of recreational uses are developed and managed so as to protect the quality of the environment and the property values of adjacent and nearby residential areas. Now, neither before the town board or before the plan board did any of the board members ask questions that are relevant to compliance with this purpose section of the code. They just took the simple definition of membership club from a previous section of the code, and they said, well, you qualify, and therefore we have to permit you, and so then we'll address our various issues with respect to environmental and building codes and all of that. But not once did they explore any of these issues with the applicant. So as I said, when they met with the town board, it was a car club. Then we sent off a barrage of letters to all the board members, and we were expecting that they would expand their definition of car club to include recreational uses, so as to comply with this purpose section. So when they appeared before the planning board, all of a sudden they say, oh yes, and then we're gonna have fishing, boating, and swimming at this car club. And by the way, keep in mind that the subdivision as they've planned it, 3 acres is for the 19,000 square foot garage car club. And then the balance of the property is supposed to be subdivided for residential use, although that's a little unclear. And the lake, the large lake that's on the property, is in the other subdivided area. So they would retain an easement, a right to use the lake. But yet it's going to be a fishing, swimming, and boating club. The clubhouse, as far as I can tell, and they've said so, has a minimal common area. I don't think there are any locker rooms, there are no shower facilities. I don't know how many bathrooms they have. They said the water use would only be such that you would use in a 5-bedroom house. So it seems like a very haphazard plan. All of a sudden they're introducing, you know, the fishing, boating, and swimming concept. And I believe it's to comply with this, the code, but it's really not intended. Then they said something kind of alarming, which was that one doesn't need to own a car in order to be a member of this car club, that you just need to own the bay. So I don't know what you can store in the bay, fishing rods, boats, old furniture, you know, and none of this was explored by the planning board. I understand that they also appeared before the Architectural Review Board, and I wasn't aware of it. I'm sorry. I don't think any of us were able to attend that. We don't know what they said. At this point, they're in the preliminary stages. They're doing their dog and pony show in front of all the boards, getting preliminary comments, and then they're going to have a formal presentation, I guess, and there will be a public hearing. But lots of money's being spent, lots of wheels are being spinned, but not in our interest, as far as I'm concerned. So it seems to me, you know, our first challenge is to determine whether, in fact, this car club complies with the town code. I don't know whether the town code can be amended at this point after the application is put in to clarify it, but that's another issue. But so the first question in my mind is, does the car club comply with the town code? And it seems to me that all of us, not just those of us up here, if you have an interest in not having this 19,000 square foot concrete, I don't know what, storage area in our town, that you should all send letters and saying, you know, this is not a membership club as contemplated by the code. It doesn't add to the recreational uses of the town. It doesn't increase property values. It probably reduces property values. It doesn't enhance our environment, et cetera. I'm sorry.
I'm listening to what you said, and I thought I had heard something about an apartment for a caretaker as well.
Yes,
It
It's
is,
still in there.
Yeah, there's an apartment above for a caretaker.
which
But
can
they-
be used for anything.
Well,
Technically.
presumably it's for the caretaker.
Right,
And a
who lives
clubhouse.
in a clubhouse.
But that's not, I don't find that in itself that unusual. So we have the issue of whether this club complies with the town code, such that they would have a right to get a special permit. So that's an issue that we're gonna look at from a legal perspective. And then assuming that that's the case, that it does comply with the town code and the applicant is entitled to a special permit, then you have all those other issues, the environmental concerns, you know, all of those. Do you make the scope smaller? Do you make it look better? So you get to those issues after you address the legal issue of whether in fact they're entitled to a special permit.
Consistent with what you're saying about the nature of this facility and whether there's entitlement, I happened to watch the town board meeting where this was presented. I don't know whether it was the first presentation, and I was really concerned by how the town board members reacted, acting as if there was a right to this, that this facility could be granted a special permit by right. And there was no discussion whatsoever of that second section, which amends the right to put to get a special use permit in a residential facility. It seems to me very clearly that second section limits it and talks in terms of there's got to be protection of the environment in order for that to qualify, and most significantly, any such facility has to be to the betterment and not the detriment of the values in the area and in the nearby area. So, you know, that was really a great concern to me when I watched that town board meeting, that there wasn't any questioning of the appropriateness or the legal right to do that. So I think that that's something that I hope that gets addressed early on by this group.
There's another question there.
I just have a question. Since the property is zoned residential,
And let's say that the application is approved and the car club fails. You have a 19,000 square foot building in a residential area. Could this become an apartment building? Could this become a nursing home? Could this-
Correct.
That's a huge issue.
Huge.
Huge issue for you.
And what if there were environmental spills? Who cleans it up? Is the town gonna retain a bond in order to demolish and to clean up an environmental spill? So-
In response to your question, when that was brought up about the fact that it could go to bankruptcy, and that you can, I'm sure you've seen what happens to organizations that go into bankruptcy. There's suddenly, who cares, right? When I asked Adam Kaufman, the director of planning, that question, what happens, he said, well, you now have a white elephant on your hands.
It's a very honest
And
answer.
that's the direction that they have moved it. The issue with regard to petroleum products, fuels, oils, and so forth, was brought up recently. And the attorney for the applicant indicated that there would be no maintenance in terms of antifreeze, batteries, brake fluids, oils, but he didn't get to the tank. He didn't get to the gasoline tank. If you have 56 cars in there, I understand, after asking a couple of car owners, what's the quantity of gasoline in these tanks? Has to be kept filled, because they don't want water vapor to be in there. Has to be reused, because they don't want it to build into what they refer to as shellac. And he talked to me about, said you can average about 20 gallons per car. If you have 56 cars, the question of fire arose. They're going to have fire curtains. Again, I compliment them on the detail that they've gone to. They're going to have fire curtains between the bays to prevent the fire from spreading. John can address more accurately than I can. If you've got a tank full of gasoline and you've got fire curtains hanging between two cars, what's the risk?
I mean, it all depends on what those fire curtains are rated as, 2-hour ratings, it all depends. There hasn't been, there have been studies with the FPA which says usually what happens is the fire doesn't jump from car to car, but it might not jump from car to car, but it might, the rest of the building, So, there's studies out there, it says in NFPA you're not supposed to be using water on a tank like that because they could explode. There's a lot of risk. They don't have enough studies about indoor car garages. They have about outdoor car garages. I can find plenty of that, but indoor, they haven't done that many studies on.
Thank you. One of the additions that they put into the plan now is that they're going to have what is referred to as a dry hydrant. And members of the board asked to define what the dry hydrant meant, and it is a hydrant sitting on the land with a pipe and a screen extending into the pond. And they would then use that water to spray onto the building or the surrounding. And my question is, where does that water go? After you put the fire out, where does the water go? What is it carrying with it? Now, I understand that the flow of water on the surface goes into Byram Lake and then through Connecticut into Long Island Sound. The subsurface water is of concern as well, because it flows down through the Tamarack Aquifer. And that Tamarack Aquifer ends up down here in Loudon Cove. Loudon Cove is one of the components of New York City Reservoir. I've challenged the attorney about the flow of water, and he said to me, it doesn't flow anywhere, don't worry about it. I advised them that I didn't wish to hear it from him.
Have they done environmental studies yet? Have they even done?
If they have, they've neglected some rather important points. This is the Town of North Castle Conservation Board report on this property dealing with the date February 2nd. Project description, I'm now reading the comments under supplemental discussion of alternative 7-lot property. I'm looking at number 3. Okay? This project, this area was determined in a 1990 hydrological study to be, quote, "Any further development and/or land use should be undertaken with the view of protecting the shallow groundwater supplies." That's item 3. Item 4 reads, in a Westchester County 1977 208 wide, district-wide waste management, the issue is this site is included in both designations and should be considered for protection and further development as a water resource. This
Nick,
is-
is that the 3-acre subdivided piece, or
Thi-
is that the,
This
does
is
that include the whole?
This is the whole area that they're talking about, all of the units in there. And you can go through it all and see all of the components that fit into it. Question?
I don't know if this is comparable, but several years ago, I was in charge of a project in Pound Ridge. Hired an attorney to represent us, but we were on the other side. And we were doing something with water, wells, a project far smaller than this. It ended up that the Army Corps of Engineers became involved, the environmental, something became involved, the town of Pound Ridge, the town of Stamford. And it took at least 2.5 to 3 years for all the studies to be completed. And finally, at the end of the day, the project was severely reduced in size, and we had to put up an additional bond of insurance, considerable bond, for, I think, 2 to 3 years to cover any potential damage to well water. So I can't imagine that they would even go ahead with this until all kinds of studies are completed. I don't know that.
Sure.
May I just add one more component? This aquifer, if you read the description of water supplied to the town, goes to districts 4, 5, 5 is connected to 4 and 7. 7 supplies water to Crittenton and the Wampus schools. Now this is, I can't say it's going to happen today or tomorrow. I can't say it's ever going to happen. But if it does have a spill, and there is a contamination, and we talked about a caretaker, will the caretaker be capable, will he be trained, or she, be trained sufficiently to know what to do to immediately arrest a spill?
We had to
Opens
deal
up-
with a group such as this, and the people, some of the people were at least 5 to 10 miles away from where the project was, because the water dealt with that.
Right. According to what I can gather from the documents I've pulled off the internet, we're about 5 miles from New York City Water Supply and the aqueduct.
Should New York City be notified?
We have a letter, a draft letter that covers all of those, right? We also have, and you may have copies of it, and when I mentioned before that we work as a team, we put this letter together in draft form, then we sat down for about an hour and a half and reworked it, and then all of us who participated signed it. We sent it to the supervisor. It asked for an adjournment of the activities, and it states reasons why the flow of water into the Kensico Reservoir and the Water District 7. We asked the proceedings be adjourned, and we also asked for official documents. This was dated March 6th. Haven't heard anything yet. Sir?
Nick, two questions. One is membership. Have they discussed whether it's limited to North Castle? I imagine it's going to probably be, when we talk about the benefit of to the residents of North Castle, I imagine it's people from all over outside of town that are going to park their wealthy cars in that area. The other is, it sounds like it's going on, and they're investing money. Listening to Mr. Turner, as we should bring an attorney on as soon as possible. Have you really sat down, gotten an idea of what it's, how many hours we're talking about, what it's going to cost us, or is that premature? Because I think we have to, if we're serious, we have to bring him on board relatively quickly, since it looks like it's moving along fast.
That's a discussion that we're gonna have after the camera's turned off, and we can,
Yes.
Nick, one other question. They talked about putting a fire pump.
Yes.
This is a wetland property.
Yes.
You're not supposed to build on the water, you're not supposed to, how are they letting them put a fire pump that's gonna pump out hundreds, if not maybe thousands of gallons of water out of that lake onto that piece of property? Isn't that protected somehow? I mean,
It is. If you read, I don't mean to bore you, if you read the diversity study, biodiversity study, it indicates that those kinds of events shouldn't take place because there's a buffer around each of these areas. And those buffers should be adhered to. The idea of a buffer is basically to mitigate the issues that created by man. And those don't seem to be, and if you look at don't seem to be addressed here. If you look at the plan, here's a wetlands here. And the 100-foot line goes across the buildings in both directions. I'm sorry, got it upside down. Here's the wetlands here. Goes across, the 100-foot boundary goes across the building, goes across the parking lot, a major portion of the parking lot, across this other building. Then there's also going to be a septic field, which will take the water that's generated in the buildings, and it's going to be a march through a holding proceeding a tank that they will have, and then will be emptied into the wetlands. And I'm amazed also at the lack of questions asked by the people sitting there.
What did you say the fire pump is gonna be, and which
But from what I can see from the way they have created it, this is the entrance to the building, comes in this way. They're going to put the fire pump in this location, at least that's where they pointed to. So the pump will be here, drawing water from the lake, which would then be used to extinguish any fire that may be in the area. Yes, sir.
You indicated there was lack of questions. Is that from the board?
Yes, the members are sitting there.
Could I ask a question? And I'm having a senior moment. I was at a meeting where the board was asked, brought up to sign the letter, and I forgot what it's called, or they're not involved, or they have no...
Conflict of interest?
Conflict of interest letters, thank you. Has the board signed those letters?
Not with us.
No, but that's in general.
I've never heard them indicating a conflict of interest. Have they? I mean,
It's typically, there's a provision in general municipal law about conflicts of interest. There may well be a provision in your local code that, affirmatively prohibits an elected official or any employee voting where there's a familial, proprietary, or financial stake in the outcome. It's just the law, it's your code. This signing letter is a little bit more ceremonial than this.
Well, the reason I'm asking this, specifically, it was asked at a board meeting, would everybody, would you sign it? I think it was several months ago, and I assumed they did. But if they didn't, I'd like them to have to sign it.
I will relate to that. For a number of years, I was the chairman of the Landmarks Preservation Committee, and one of the things we did in our meeting, because we had to deal with applicants with regard to the use of historic areas, one of the things we asked immediately was any members of my board if they had a conflict of interest. And we did have one who did have a conflict of interest, and it was quickly resolved.
Well, saying it verbally and putting your name on a piece of paper is not...
But that's what we did. That's what we did in our meetings. Question way down there.
It's my belief that Byram Lake is a source of water for Kisco.
Yes, it is.
From all the Trump property talks years ago. So aren't the people there concerned, and how can we do anything that is going to possibly impinge on their water supply?
We have a draft letter, and I deliberately have held it back from any further development of it until we've dealt with an attorney as to what we should do with this. This is a letter created which says we are informing you of the potential problems because of. And we hope to send that to, and I've found addresses for, since the water goes through Connecticut, Greenwich supervisor, residents of Greenwich, Mount Kisco, and EPA and DEC. So we've got a large mailing list ready to move that letter once this all comes out through an organized pattern. Yes?
Did I hear you say that there are 50, there's going to be room for 56 cars here?
Yes, you did.
Was that in the application?
Yes, it was.
That's unbelievable to think of having garage, storage facility, club, whatever you want to call it, for 56 cars in a residential neighborhood.
Right.
I mean,
That's
just
the
on its
point.
face,
Right.
it's ridiculous.
Think of the amount of gasoline in that compared to a resident that's 500 feet away.
It's unbelievable. And couple that with the fact that this is in a lowland, it is an environmentally sensitive area, it is near Byram Lake, where Trump was stopped from having a golf course because of the use of fertilizers that were in proximity to this lake that services Mount Kisco. I mean, it's just really, it's absurd on its face. It really is.
Well, again, when we do go to the meetings, public meetings, I trust you will be there and voice your opinion, present yourself, and speak your point, and I would make sure that you have the facts. You noticed just a moment ago that I was quoting from a document, and I was asked, does that cover the area? This document not only covers this area, but it also covers the area owned by the Nature Conservancy. This area covers both of them. Are there any other questions?
Thank you for all your work and for everyone here.
Is there an issue, from the board's perspective of who can become a member and how that works?
The applicant has indicated that we have 20 residents of the town who are interested in storing cars there. The others would be from outside, and it would be a nice gesture, so these individuals did not have to travel 2 or 3 neighborhoods or towns away in order to store their cars. That was one of the initial comments.
And does the town understand, like, when you talk about bankruptcy, just the economics of being a member and how the club would actually work?
Some of
Is
the
that part
questions,
of-
yeah, some of the questions that we've asked them to respond to are, what's the membership structure? Is there an initiation fee that has to be paid? Can you be a member if you just want to fish? Or must you own a car, and how much do you pay? And those are some of the questions that we've put to the town. They're not at the point where they need to respond to any of that yet, unfortunately, to us. Because the application that's been presented to them is at preliminary stages. So I think we're all entitled to speak when there's a public hearing, and we can publicly voice all of those questions, but until now, there hasn't been a process by which we can formally ask those questions and the town can respond to us.
There is an opportunity at the beginning of some of the town board meetings where the chairman will allow public comments on issues not in the agenda. And we're given a few minutes to do that. And the same opportunity was provided by Mr. Green in the planning board meetings, where he gave the applicants the citizens a few moments to discuss the issue of the applicants.
But also, let me just say that we've asked questions like, will there be fences around it? Will there be gates? These are valuable cars. How are you going to prevent people from, entering the property? What is the lighting? What are the hours of operation? Are they going to apply for a liquor license? Is there going to be a snack bar? Are they going to have ATVs? Are they going to have dirt bikes?
Car shows.
We've sent a whole slew of questions to the town. We haven't heard a response to any of those questions, and our hope is that those questions will be presented to the applicant as well. But, we've sent reams of questions.
There was another issue, but yes.
Nick, we had 60 signatures on a petition that
Yes.
was against this special use permit. Did we get any reaction from the town with respect to that, or?
Not yet. I'm still waiting. Sir?
Has the town given any evidence of what the benefits of this are to the town?
If they have, sir, I was not aware of it
Well,
coming into my direction.
As far as the town is concerned, the applicant as a landowner is allowed to use his property in certain ways. And that's, you know, that inures to all of our benefits, the fact that we can use our properties in ways that are allowed. But where we're falling down is that they think that because it's a membership club, that they have a right to the special permit, and therefore you can use it for this membership club. And we think they're not giving enough weight to the other sections of the code.
To respond for a moment, the question was asked me, does this cover all of the areas? And it says in here, in response to the application for a 2-lot subdivision consisting of 1 lot of 3.30 acres. So it is included in the document. He doesn't distinguish out each line that this pertains to A, this pertains to B. I have another question. Yes, dear.
Dear. Go ahead, dear.
I've forgotten that one.
You better not. I don't know if this has any impact on the situation, but according to someone who knows about these cars must be run for 15 minutes every week. So, inside or outside? Inside, I think, might be a problem. Outside, it may also be a problem. So,
I
take
have to
that.
address the question back there. Has the town asked questions at the planning board? And this would be on the tape. You can see that after we had chatted away for a while, the chairman asked if there were additional questions, and a gentleman came up whom I don't know, and I believe he's from Blair Road, but I didn't catch his name. He asked them, what about lighting? And I believe the answer, as I recall it, was from the chairman. We hadn't thought about that.
Right, good question.
I would think after this many months of doing this kind of work, you have at least a basic checklist. You know, where's the water gonna go? How much garbage, you know, how down the line? Yes.
Have they talked about also about 19,600 square feet on 3 acres yet?
No, they haven't.
That's
They haven't
way
addressed,
above the residential.
they haven't addressed that at all.
We asked Adam Kaufman, I think it was on the conference call, and he said that's a permitted FAR, that's permitted.
So I could build a 19, in that calculation, I could build a 15,000 square foot on a 2-acre property. I mean,
I don't know.
I think my neighbors over here would kill me.
There's a question way back there. Yes, sir.
Have we had an opportunity to recognize what the precedent is relative to this facility being built elsewhere? And what obstacles had to be overcome if it was built somewhere else?
Tony, you addressed the question.
The town doesn't have any land to offer big enough to build this 19,000 square foot piece of.
Other towns, I'm
No,
talking
he's
about
talking about other towns.
Other
Well,
towns.
other towns,
I mean.
No, he's
I
asking
know,
whether
but
it's
yeah.
It's not up to
serious.
us to
Yeah,
decide.
I don't think we're aware of anything, we haven't done extensive research, but this is being put in a residential area, which is totally different from whether you put this kind of club.
No, I
in it.
understand that, but maybe it's happened elsewhere in the area, surrounding areas.
The little research we've done, we haven't come up with anything. I mean, there are private owners of storage facilities for cars. You have one in Banksville, right? You have the museum, right, owned by Prey, but
But that's his private club. That's his
that's
private
his
collection
private
of cars.
collection, right?
And he has
Yeah, it's
that.
a
And
collection.
is it in a commercial area, or what kind of a zone is it in, Arthur?
Is it on Banksville Road?
Probably
It's a mixed zone. I think it's a mixed zone.
Mixed zone, okay. Any other questions, thoughts? All right, keep those, yes, sir.
This, just because this is like getting a little heated, the applicant itself is, you know, he's made an application, he's going through the process. There's nothing legally to say he can't go through that process.
Absolutely.
Right? So in a sense, it's not that we're inclined to think this is going to pass, right? It's just he's going through the application process, and it's still our business now to present an argument against it.
Actually, the town board did say that it's a permitted use.
Let's see.
They said it clearly at the town board meeting and at the work session, and you can go online and look at that.
Have said that the proposal is backed by the board.
I see. That's what I wanted to know.
What they're saying is it's a permitted use pursuant to the code, and now they have to go through all of their approval processes in order to
It's permitted use within the town code.
correct, it's a permitted use, but
Who said it
now
was
they have
backed
to.
by the board?
Did somebody just say that?
Somebody, I got general people in town said that it is clear that the board likes this proposal and intends to
Pursue it.
Well, they said very clearly that they believe that it's approved, that it has to be approved pursuant to the code, and they've been advised that by Roland Barone and Adam Kaufman.
Right. Well, Bob asked twice though at, I don't know, the planning board,
Yes.
or whatever, what, he asked specifically, what does this do for our town? What benefit is it to us? And you get this glazed, this just look of total indifference. It's like they don't care.
On the petition, it states, and this is one of your requests, Randy, therefore, we hereby respectfully request the town obtain and share a reasoned opinion of council. This goes back 4 weeks. They have copies of this. We have not heard from them.
Well, remember when we went to the first work session, it was almost a convivial environment when they were proposing this. And Martabano, the attorney, was winking at the people at the table, and everybody's smiling, and it was almost a social event. And those of us that sat there, we were not allowed to speak. So we were sitting there, just busting to say something. But it was clear to us, one of the, Diane Rolfe clearly said, these are works of art, much like you would hang on a wall in your home. And I'm thinking, well,
There's the first one.
How would you like them next year?
the citizens, it was for us that she was saying this, much like works of art that you would put on your wall.
But they clearly believe that it's permitted pursuant to the code, and all they have to do is make sure that it's environmentally sound and that it's built pursuant to the town, to the building codes and regs. But the board believes, or at least are acting under the belief, that it's a permitted use. And so that's why I go back to the original issue of, why didn't you explore all of those terms in the in the purpose section of the code, and ask of the applicant and demand that it complies with that.
That's why we asked for a reasoned opinion of council, and they have to be disavowed of the notion that this is clearly permissible by right.
Correct. And they have a fiduciary
town has-
obligation to us as residents of the town, and they have a fiduciary obligation to the town to make sure that what they do complies with the spirit and the intent and the language of the code.
Can I just say from our experience, we ended up suing the building department because their attitude was that CVS could move in retail to retail, but we found that they were making changes, they were changing windows, they had a sign that had to go in front of the architectural review board like everybody else, but Roland and the town board said, no, it's retail to retail, and at the 9th hour, CVS and Werber ended up pulling because they knew they weren't gonna move.
Right.
So you have to plug on.
Right. Well, it's a bit frustrating because we're sending a bunch of letters to all of the town board members, all the members of the planning board, and they're not responding at all to us. Yet, it's clear that Martabano and the applicant's attorneys are aware of all of our comments because he is responding to us. And the town should be acting on our behalf.
Yep.
And it just seems a little unfair.
Yes.
I heard that they're going to be calling themselves a nonprofit.
Yes.
That takes it off the tax rolls, does it not? Or
No, it doesn't.
No, I believe they still pay tax.
Yeah, it's a not-for-profit membership club, and it has to be not-for-profit in order to comply with the code. But it doesn't mean that they don't pay taxes to the town. They still have to pay taxes to the town.
That doesn't mean sometime down the road she'll become financially insolvent, but only that they do come back to the town and say, listen, start lifting these restrictions. We're paying you $100,000 a year in taxes, and we just can't afford to go along as where we are going now, so we're gonna have to be for profit. We're gonna have to sell liquor. We're gonna have to swimming in bathe or have gasoline on site. And all the other petrochemicals and toxic chemicals that are restricted. And what are the towns gonna say at that point? Oh, gosh. Oh, no, we can't allow you to do that. We don't need your $100,000 in taxes. I don't think that's gonna happen. So those are part, again, the unintended consequences that we expose down the road. It opens up a whole can of worms.
Okay, I think we're coming to a point where I think the majority of the questions have been asked, and if we'd be more than happy to ask for more. Again, if you wish to share your email with the concerned citizens, a card, put your email on that, and you can do that and give it to the group. Up here in the front, I have the letter I talked about with Arthur, that Arthur had constructed regarding the various points. If you look at the petition, you see a description, or you'll read a description of the activities. So these two sources give you some information that you can jot down on the computer and send it to them. On the back of this sheet is the emails of the board members and the planning board, so you can send it directly to them in that way. And if you'd like to comment, and I think this letter demonstrates to me, and I think to other reasonable, well, that's not a good idea, to reasonable people, I wouldn't put others in there. But it indicates that this group is not just a single entity. Here are 6 individuals who are willing to put their name on here asking the town to stop this process so that we can have the necessary time and information to review and formulate all those questions. Right? Formulate all those questions to present to them. We haven't heard word one. Okay? So if you would like to, please come up and take this. I thank you.